Hi, Peter Thomson here, and I'm going to do a quick Ignite style presentation, so 20 slides in 5 minutes, 15 seconds per slide, about Gamestorming. So I presented this last week at the Anywhere Working event. So what's interesting about brainstorming as a way of creativity is that it was invented in a particular context. So it was created by BBDO in the 1940s and popularised by IDEO in the 1990s. What's really interesting is that brainstorming isn't perfect. You know, we've all sat in long, drawn-out brainstorms with no preparation, and brainstorming is great in the context in which it was created, where people do a lot of creativity all the time, and they've got an underlying culture of creativity. But in most organisations, that culture just isn't there, so brainstorming doesn't work. There's a couple of particular problems with brainstorming. For example, most organisations are quite hierarchical, so that hierarchy comes into the brainstorm and can pollute the kind of no idea is a bad idea thing. There's another really interesting problem, which is that the follow-up just gets delegated onto the most junior person in the room, who becomes the scribe. You know, and there's no way of filtering ideas, there's no collection and converging process. So there is a real need for new creativity techniques. We know how important creativity is in every business. You know, execution is becoming more and more commoditized, and creativity and the ability to create new ideas is absolutely vital. So what would be a new way of taking brainstorming and creativity in business and making it more practical and more effective? So there's a new book out called Gamestorming, a new set of approaches. It's a book that brought together a lot of different creativity techniques in one place. What they did was look at how children play. And what's really interesting is that children don't just kind of play for the sake of it. They'll often very quickly form rules and competition. They'll start competing with each other, whatever the game it is that they're playing. And we talk a lot about adult playfulness, creativity, creative spaces and things, and so there's some great, wonderful creative office spaces. But if you just put someone in a nice coloured office and give them some beanbags, it doesn't actually inspire creativity in practice in the way that you need it in a business. So one of the things that you can do instead to create games and gamestorming is actually to create boundaries. So when you're creating boundaries, you give direction to a game. So it's one of the things that a game needs. The other thing is that a game doesn't exist without rules. It's the weirdest thing. We're talking about creativity and play, but one of the most important things that you can do to create a game storm instead of a brainstorm is to actually put some structure in place. And that structure can be moderated by a facilitator. So the same way that a school football game kind of collapses with no referee and no moderator, no one to kind of keep the rules in check, you spend half the time arguing. Same thing can happen in a brainstorm. So a facilitator is really important. The other thing that's important is that the props that you use in a brainstorm are just kind of there to write whiteboards, capture stuff for the sake of it. Whereas in a game storm, the props are actually going to be playing pieces. You're going to be moving post-it notes around, you're going to be interacting with things in a much more kind of practical way. So there's 3 types of games. First is a game that introduces either an idea or introduces people to each other. The second one is a diverging game, so it's idea generation, diverging. And the third type is converging and prioritization. So the first game, an example of that first type is the marshmallow pasta tower game. So that's where you build a tower out of pasta as high as possible to get a marshmallow up. And it's just a chance to break the ice and introduce people together. Second type of game is this more kind of ideation, diverging game. So I worked in an agency where we used to love playing the what would XYZ do game. So we would take a business problem that we're up to, and the game was to come up with the most outrageous thing that someone like Napoleon would do to attack that business problem. Someone said invade Russia. The other type of game that's really interesting is building on this kind of diverging is the elevator mix and match game, where you actually mix and match different ideas. The idea is to come up with the most outrageous combination, and then kind of you win points for being the weirdest, kind of wackiest combination, like buzzword bingo. The really interesting thing about Gamestorming is it includes diverging games, so bartering over like 100 points, and you barter over what's the most important feature in a particular thing that you're trying to prioritize, and you kind of trade on what are the most important features you want to prioritize. So you can take the opportunity to turn a brainstorm into a game by just adding a little bit more structure. We do this in our organisation. We've got a creativity collective that I'm a part of called Converge UK. We bring together design, business and technology, so three very, very different disciplines. And we use a lot of games just to kind of, on the evenings that we run, we use games to break the ice, we use games to come up with new ideas, and we even use games to kind of converge and choose and prioritise ideas as well on the night. So every time you're faced with a boring brainstorm, just look for opportunities to inject a little bit of competition, opportunities to provide a few boundaries, and opportunities to create that momentum. And know what you're doing. Are you introducing, diverging or converging when you're in a creativity session?